Today we're looking at Drizzle. Now, we've heard from many of you that you like Drizzle, and since Supabase is at its foundation, at its core, just a fully fledged Postgres database, you can use, of course, all the tools that are available for Postgres, like, for example, Drizzle. Now, Drizzle has a bunch of cool features, and specifically what we're looking at today is also to use it in edge functions. So you can use it both in Supabase edge functions as well as, for example, Vercel edge functions. So that works out of the box. And you also get migrations, which is quite useful. So you don't have to write kind of the SQL yourself. You can actually define it in kind of a TypeScript manner, and then use Drizzle Kit to generate those SQL migrations. So let's have a look at that. Kind of how can we get this set up? And there's a good quick start guide on the Drizzle Kit. So here I just have an empty project. I called it Edgy Drizzle because we'll be using Supabase edge functions later to retrieve the data, for example. And then we'll just use npm here. We'll just do npm init. So in order to kind of do this locally, we'll need some local dependencies. We'll just kind of create a default here. And then what we can do is we can just copy these. So we'll need the Drizzle ORM, we need Postgres, and as a development dependency, we need the Drizzle Kit. Okay, and then the way this works is basically we have kind of a schema.ts file, and then we're using kind of PG core here from the Drizzle ORM to then create our table, kind of our user table, and define this. So rather than writing SQL ourselves, we're kind of defining this in sort of TypeScript here. So let's do that. Let's create a new file, call it schema.ts, and then we'll paste this in here. And as you can see, kind of we have the dependencies installed. So we get kind of our ID, name, what have you, and then in the background it will generate the SQL for us. So let's have a look at how this works. So basically we need a Drizzle configuration file. So that's just this here, drizzle config.ts. So let's say new file, drizzle config.ts. And then we'll just import here from Drizzle Kit our config. And so now we can basically say, okay, where's our schema? So in our case, the schema is just here in the root. And then we can define an out file. And so this is where it actually becomes interesting, because what we can do is we can generate the SQL file and put it into the Supabase migrations, for example. So what we can do is when we say Supabase init, and it asks us if we want to generate VS Code settings for Deno. Let's say yes, because later we want to use our Supabase edge functions, which use Deno. And then now we have here Supabase, and if you're familiar with like Supabase migrations new, Supabase migrations new, and we say init. So you can see that then here we have a migrations folder, and we generate kind of a SQL file in here. So what we can do is actually we can point Drizzle config here to our Supabase migrations folder. So Supabase migrations. So here's Supabase migrations. So basically you can say Drizzle Kit, take our schema and generate our Postgres migrations in the Supabase migrations folder. And so what we can do then now is we can say, okay, so what they do is, create a script. So in scripts, we say a generate script, and specifically Drizzle Kit, because it's a development dependency. So if we look in our package.json, here we have our dev dependency is the Drizzle Kit. And so we can say generate Drizzle Kit, generate PG. And so now if we say npm run generate, we're basically taking the schema file, and then Drizzle Kit is generating here this migration for us, and it's generating the sepal create table if not exists, with kind of the correct structures here. And so now if we say Supabase start, we're spinning up our local Supabase stack, and we're applying all the SQL migrations here in our Supabase migrations folder. So, you know, this is basically kind of an alternative approach here to running the migration with, you know, Drizzle. So you can obviously do this as well, where you can say, okay, you provide the connection string, and then you run this through using the migrate function from Drizzle ORM. But since we kind of have this already, you know, sort of built in within Supabase, we can just, you know, have the migrations in here. And so if we run Supabase start, we can look at our local studio here. And you can see we have our users table and name, email, password, role, kind of all that. So this is exactly the schema that was created here. And now what we could say if we're, you know, were to create another table. So like if we now update our schema and we say, for example, we want another table, and we'll call this countries. And then we'll just have an email. No, country doesn't have an email. Could have an email, but we'll just say, okay, we have an ID and a name for our countries, and this is PG table countries. And so now what we can say is, again, npm run generate. And so what you can see now is we have a new migration. So every time there's kind of a change and we run generate, we get a new migration. Now this isn't auto applied, right? Because our stack is running locally. So if we're running locally already, what we can do is Supabase db reset. Now, obviously that resets and runs kind of all the migrations again. So if you had kind of data locally in your Supabase database, that would be gone. But then you have kind of all the schemas applied here, and so you can now see countries, users. Yeah, lovely. And so now what we can do is maybe we can here in our countries, we can create a new country. Let's just do this quickly. So I'm here in Singapore. Save that. So we have a new country, maybe another country. A lot of you are in the United States, I guess of America. If we want to be, well, let's just say USA, might be easier. Okay, we have a couple countries here, and then maybe do another one, United Kingdom. Well, now I'm spelling it out. Obviously, I have no convention here, but okay. So we have 3 countries in here now. And so now let's have a look at how we can use this with Supabase. Now, the great thing is we can, here are our queries. So what we can do is we can use this portion here, connection pooling. So in the last launch week, we have launched Supervisor. Now, Supervisor is a very powerful Postgres connection pooler, and so especially if you're working with something like Supabase Edge functions, you want to use a connection pooler, or in general, if you're using kind of a serverless environment where you're spinning up, kind of Edge functions very quickly and basically spinning up a lot of connections to the database, you want to make sure you have a connection pooler so you don't overload kind of the database. And so using Supervisor, here we're basically using this connection pooling. So let's create a new function, Supabase functions new, and we'll call it Drizzle. And so now here we have a new, within Supabase, we have our functions. And now the great thing is, because we've generated here our VS Code settings, you can see here we have the Deno enable paths. So we're basically enabling Deno for our Supabase functions. And so now if we go here, we can see, okay, we have all of this set up correctly. And so one thing now, we can actually import dependencies directly from NPM. So this is actually really cool. So we can say, okay, well, let's copy just, actually, let's just copy over the dependencies first. So we'll say here our dependencies, we need Drizzle as a dependency, and then as well as our schema. Now, if we're having functions, generally the recommended approach would be to have like a shared, the schema we can share kind of across different functions. So have like a shared folder, and then we'll just for now, we'll copy the schema. So we need to have it kind of in the shared folder here. Let's paste it in there. And then we can here from our shared, we can import our schema. And you can see here we have our countries and our users. Let's just get our countries out of it. And now another thing is we need our import maps. So what we can do is within our functions, we can create a new file called import map.json. So this is a similar approach here as our package.json. So we have functions import map. And what we can do is now we can basically import kind of all the dependencies. So similar here in our package.json, we have these dependencies here, right? So what we can do is in our import map, we define these as imports. And so what we need to do is we need to tell Deno. So normally in Deno, you give the entire path to the dependency. So for example, if it's hosted on esm.sh, you would do like your https://esm.sh, right? But so now we also support npm out of the box. So we can say within the npm directory, give us Drizzle ORM, and then we'll pin kind of this exact version here. So same here, we'll say like npm get the Postgres node Postgres, at the version 3.3. Here we are. And so now we can use these named imports in our functions. So here we'll have Drizzle from Drizzle ORM /Postgres.js. Okay, and so now we have our dependencies here, so we can just use the named imports. And so what we can do now is we can just use our connection pooling enabled code snippet here. And we will need to get the connection string. So if you do Supabase status here, remember we're running fully locally. We actually have the database URL. So we can use our locally running Postgres. So the nice thing is we can say connection string equals Deno env.get, and we have the Supabase specific variables. We have Supabase underscore db URL exported, so we can, we don't need to manage the secret. So basically, when we're running locally, it's pointing to our local instance, and then when we're deploying this to our project, then it's using our correct project kind of database URL. So let's say, yep, connection string here, and then db from countries, and then we're saying all countries. And so the nice thing here now is we, have kind of all countries fully typed. So, if we were to access kind of that, then we get the ID and the name of the country. So that's kind of a, nice thing with Drizzle. And then let's just return all the countries here as application JSON. Yep. And we're not using this, so we can just give that an underscore. So yeah, let's maybe run this function locally. Supabase functions serve, and we can pass the no verify JWT flag, and then we can just pull it up with localhost functions Drizzle, and there we have it. Okay, we're getting all our countries. Singapore, USA, United Kingdom. Yep, that's pretty much it. And so now let's actually deploy this. Supabase functions deploy Drizzle no verify JWT. Now the thing is, we need to first link this to a project. So let's actually do that quickly. So we'll go database.new. We'll create a new project in my organization here. We'll call it edgy Drizzle. So if you're generating a password here, make sure to copy it and save it, for example, in a password manager somewhere, because if you want to directly connect to the database later, you will need this database password. And then let's create a new project. Okay, so we've got our project spun up here, so we can go to project settings, a database. So you can see for serverless connections, so Supabase edge functions or Vercel edge functions, you want to use the connection pooling mode. You can use kind of the default settings, and then you just want to make sure that you use this URL here that has the pooler.supabase in it, and then put in the password that I mentioned earlier. Now, if we're deploying this, we can just use the Supabase DB URL, which has the password already set in. So now what we can do is we take our project ID, which is this one here in the URL, or you can go to general as well. There's the reference ID, can copy that, and we can say Supabase link project ref equals our project ID, and then paste in your database password here. And now we can say Supabase DB push. And so we're connecting to our database, and then we're applying the migrations that Drizzle Kit had generated here. So now if we go to our table editor, we can see our user and our countries. Now, obviously, the data that was locally in our database is not being copied over. So let's just insert a row. Let's just insert Singapore, just for now as an example. Great, and so we have that in there now. And so what we can do is Supabase functions. We had it here already. Deploy Drizzle no verify JWT, and so now we're deploying this to our project. We can open the link that the CLI gives us. So here's our function. We can copy this, paste it over, and boom, there we are. We have our connection to our real database. If you want me to prove that it's this one, let's add another country. Save that. And now if we go and refresh our function, we can now see, yeah, Supabase Singapore. So as you can see, you can use the Supabase DB URL here, and then you don't have to worry about managing the secret. So these are set based on your project. But otherwise, if you're, for example, using something like Vercel edge functions, for example, with the T3 Turbo stack, you can see here in the .env.example, this is kind of the Postgres URL that you want to strive for. So that is, the pooler.supabase URL from your project. And then currently, to use it with the Vercel Postgres library, you need to put in this workaround, supabase-pooler.vercel, because they are checking kind of a specific format of the connection string. So that's how you can get this to work with Vercel edge functions, for example. All right, there we are. This is just a little look at how you can use Drizzle within Supabase, and specifically edge functions with Postgres. Let us know if this was helpful for you and what you'd like to learn next. And I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.